what I'm going to share a little bit about today is in some ways very basic, but I'm also going to frame this, and I always try to do this from the perspective of an advocate. Okay? With the hope that eventually, even if you become a manager or a director or an executive director, I think to the core, you're always an advocate. I'm going to frame this very differently than you would necessarily do if you walk into an accounting workshop or financial math workshop and so forth. Again, I frame this from where we are all at. And this idea of being good stewards of money, getting kind of big picture about that. Secondly, I'm going to focus about the reasons why we budget. Now, I know personally you may do budgeting for your house, home, things like that, but why do we budget for our programs and our agencies? Third, we're going to learn about the process. So we're going to learn a step-by-step process of how to develop a budget. Now, one caveat. This is one person's perspective of how to build a budget. Your respective agency, your respective finance director, ED may do it differently. So this is, again, not the way, this is a way to do it. And so take with the information for what it's worth and realize how applicable it may or may not be to your situation. But I think in this process it covers the general accepted guidelines of how to develop a budget. And hopefully it won't be too intimidating or overwhelming in that sense. It'll be step by step though. And then we'll practice. The goal is to practice formulating a budget. When we talk about financial management and budgeting, we have to figure out what we're talking about. What we're handling. We're handling money. And I'll just put it out there right now. A lot of people, including myself, there's a lot of feelings around money, right? There could be insecurities about it. Do I have enough? Will I get enough? Salary, so forth. There's, like I said, shopping, whether it be at Target or whatever, or is there limitations? What's the inequality? This symbol has a big impact on everything in our own personal lives and the work that we do. Part of this is first, for us, acknowledging our own feelings about it. Because when we start talking about budget and going in all the steps, what we don't sometimes realize, and maybe through the process you'll find this out, is how we feel about it as we're looking at salaries, how we're looking at program costs. Do I buy a walkie-talkie for the SART team, or do I pay my staff member an extra $1,000? There's a lot of feelings around money, and I just want to put it out there for all of us to recognize that for ourselves. I'm not saying there's a necessary right answer, but there's, in recognizing that, you can start looking at yourself and saying, as I go through this budget process, I'm self-assessing of how I'm looking at it, and is it an appropriate or accurate way of looking at it, okay? And my feelings around it. Because in the end, we all know we have to fight for this in terms of this work, right? And just put it right to the head in terms of state budget cuts and things like that. There's less and less, if you will, the pie, right, to get some of this money. So what ends up happening, especially in the state of California, for example, is that it a lot of times pits agencies against agencies. Right? It becomes emotional. We're all doing the same work, and yet that and our feelings around it causes all this anxiety. In the end, sometimes, it not hurts us, it could hurt our survivors, the people who are supporting. So just first off, just recognizing what that means and how it impacts you and your work. Who loves numbers? Good. Who hates numbers? Actually, I do. Believe it or not. And again, another thing to recognize not about money, but about numbers. Numbers and money, and we'll talk about more, are powerful. It's a powerful thing. It can be used for good, used for not good, right? And if you're not comfortable with numbers, and you recognize that, the question comes in, if you become management level, and you're going to have to work with numbers, how are you going to get around this issue of your own discomfort with it? What's the strategy around that? We've talked about money, our own feelings about it. We talked about numbers. Now we're talking about the people who handle it, or are typically in charge of it. And one thing to recognize when it comes to budget development is you got to know who you're dealing with and your feelings around that person or persons. You all remember the power control wheel. Money and how it's managed control whether or not a survivor lives or dies, whether they go somewhere or not. And I bring that kind of a sobering thought, especially with the power control wheel, that many of you have been trained on, that it is that way. It can be used that way. But on the other side, it can be used positively. And so that's what I want to frame for you, and to recognize that money in itself and how it's managed through when we're talking about budgets, when we're talking about working with finance directors, so it can be done in a positive way. The key as managers is this, that you have to be good stewards of money. We are stewards of money. That this money that we get from our agency, from the state of California, or from a donor, they're giving us that money and trusting us to use that to help survivors. You and us, in our roles as managers and so forth, even more specifically, have to say not only that they're giving to the agency, the money's coming to you. You now have the opportunity to make a difference, but it depends on how well a good steward of that money are you going to be. It's a gift. And are you going to use that gift to make a difference in someone's life? My point being is, when you're in this managerial role, when you see this budget, and yes, you see the numbers, understand somebody's giving you a gift to make a difference. And budgeting is a tool to help us manage that money.